The galaxy's most elite combat instructors had seen all. Warriors with claws like daggers, species that move faster than light, beings who could manipulate the battlefield with their minds. Yet, when a human stepped into the combat arena on Station Virex, a subtle ripple passed through the alien ranks. Not fear. No, it was curiosity, laced with an undercurrent of arrogance. They had heard of Deathworlders, of course, the so-called apex predators from a hostile little blue planet. But seeing one volunteer for galactic combat training, that was entertainment. His file had been short and mostly redacted. No formal rank. No prior interstellar deployment. The only detail visible to the instructors. Origin, Class 12 Deathworld, Earth. That designation alone earned him the lowest probability of survival in the incoming simulations. The Academy prided itself on challenging even the most battle-hardened species, and this human was expected to be another brief, screaming footnote. The arena's gravity fluctuated deliberately, pulsing in randomized intervals. Jagged terrain extended across kilometers of simulated wasteland, metallic crags, thermal vents, electromagnetic distortions, and trap-loaded trenches. Standard for the first trial. Hovering above, the alien instructors watched from the observation platform. They clicked and chattered among themselves in their native dialects, translated into an emotionless AI voice for the record. Specimen 73, human. Evaluation commencing. Threat level minimal. Below, the human stood still. He didn't scan the terrain. He didn't pace, stretch, or arm himself in the equipment pile provided. Instead, he cracked his neck with a loud pop and exhaled slowly. His suit was mismatched, military surplus cobbled together from different factions. A patch on his shoulder read, Outpost 29, but none of the instructors recognized the designation. The signal sounded a shrill, sweeping chime. From the far edge of the terrain, a wave of kinetic drones deployed in formation. Sleek, metallic beasts with rotating claws and plasma tips. Designed to force even elite cadets into retreat, they zeroed in on their target and charged. The human moved with a relaxed cadence, stepping into their path instead of dodging. One of the alien instructors adjusted her lens. He's not reacting with standard evasion patterns, she noted, voice quizzical. The human sidestepped the first strike, spun on his heel, and rammed an elbow into the second drone. Its gyroscopic course stuttered and failed. Without pause, he wrenched its body apart, grabbing a shard of its casing mid-fall. Then he grinned. The instructors grew silent. With shocking precision, he hurled the shard into the sensor of an incoming drone, disabling it instantly. 3 more swarmed, adjusting formation, but the human had already taken cover behind one of their own downed units. He used the shattered frame as both a decoy and shield, sliding it forward like a makeshift sled. Plasma bolts ricocheted harmlessly off it as he charged. When he reached them, he vaulted, catching the leading drone's neck midair and using the momentum to swing around, twisting it into its allies. They collided in a shower of sparks. This wasn't brute force. This was finesse. Unpredictable, improvisational, and lethal. What is his training background? One instructor demanded. No formal marks, another replied. No confirmed mentors. But this is not amateur behavior. Data flooded their HUDs, movement patterns, reaction times, environmental integration. Every statistic exceeded baseline for success. Not just by a little, but exponentially. Specimen 73 displays nonlinear combat logic. A synthetic voice observed. Prediction algorithms failing to map behavior. Back in the arena, the human was laughing. Not a manic laugh. Not one of bloodlust. It was genuine amusement, as if the entire simulation was a child's game. He caught a drone's blade arm mid-swing and, without flinching, snapped it off and hurled it like a javelin into another. He ducked beneath a concussive blast and countered with an uppercut that shattered its core. One of the alien observers muttered, "He's adapting faster than any projection model can track." The drones began to retreat, recalibrating for swarm logic. But it was too late. The humans sprinted into their midst with a guttural yell, and they fell like leaves in a storm. 2 minutes, 31 seconds. That's how long it took to complete the trial that had pushed an Andrus warrior into critical condition the day before. The arena went silent, save for the gentle whir of cooling fans. The human stood among the wreckage, hands on his hips, breathing steady. "Well," he said aloud, voice distorted slightly by his helmet, "that was fun." The AI registered the statement and filed it under sarcastic commentary. One of the alien instructors turned to the others, mandibles twitching. "This can't be real," he muttered. "We need to review his planet's threat profile." The human looked up toward the observation deck. With a slow, mocking salute, he turned and walked toward the next gate without waiting for instructions. The aliens watched him go, none speaking, each calculating what this meant for the future of the galaxy's tactical doctrines. The unspoken consensus was chilling. They hadn't just underestimated a species. They had underestimated an entire world. The swarm was meant to break him. Hundreds of drones designed by the brightest military tacticians in the galaxy, each capable of learning, adapting, and executing complex strike patterns. Individually, they were swift and deadly. Together, they were overwhelming. No cadet had ever cleared the swarm phase without serious injury. Yet the humans stood at the center of the ruined battlefield, untouched and grinning. The instructors watched in silence as the second phase initialized. This time, no opening announcement. The system simply escalated. From beneath the floor panels, a new generation of swarm units emerged. Slimmer, faster, armed with graviton disruptors and plasma lashes. These drones operated on Swarm Logic 9.7, a reactive algorithm capable of coordinating entire attack formations within milliseconds. In test scenarios, they had outmaneuvered psionic combatants and destabilized mech pilots in less than a minute. The human rolled his shoulders as the drones rose. He still hadn't picked up a weapon. The attack began in 3 vectors, high, mid, and low. A classic pincer maneuver, one perfected over decades of combat simulation. But the human didn't retreat or shield. Instead, he leaned forward and sprinted into the formation. The first drone came down from above, blade spinning. In a blink, the human ducked and flipped sideways, narrowly evading the strike. His foot came up from underneath, cracking the drone stabilizer as it passed. Mid-air, he grabbed its body, twisted, and slammed it into the incoming center drone. They exploded together. The remaining drones recalibrated instantly, forming a new arc. They adapted to his pattern, but he changed his. Instead of meeting them head-on, he darted left, dropped into a slide, and skidded under the barrage. One drone clipped his arm. No damage registered, but the motion didn't break. He rolled up, grabbed the clipped unit, and used it like a club. A brutal one. He crushed 3 drones before it overheated and blew apart in his hand. The alien instructor stared at the data feed. Reaction time, 0.12 seconds. Movement variability, off the charts. Strategic unpredictability, unquantifiable. Initiate terrain hazards, one instructor said through gritted fangs. The arena complied. Floor panels shifted, forming jagged walls and collapsing trenches. Electrical arcs jumped between pylons. Molten plasma vents began spraying at random intervals. Any other cadet would have paused, reoriented, consulted the simulation mapping interface. The human ran straight into it. He vaulted over the rising panels and used the shifting terrain to catapult himself forward. His boots barely missed the plasma vents. Sparks grazed his armor. He moved like he belonged in the chaos, like he was part of the storm. The swarm chased him through the labyrinth, and one by one, they fell to ambushes of their own design. He turned corners with inhuman precision. One moment he was gone. Then he'd appear mid-air, yanking a drone from behind and using its own graviton blade to bisect its partner. Another blink. He was sprinting up a wall, flipping, landing behind 3 confused drones and taking them apart with nothing but his elbows and knees. "He's using our own terrain algorithms against us," muttered an instructor. "He's learned their cycle." "Not possible," another whispered. "They only randomized a moment ago." But he had. Somehow, amidst the mayhem, he had observed, decoded, and weaponized the terrain itself. Every obstacle became a platform. Every hazard, a tool. He didn't just survive the environment, he owned it. Even the drones began to retreat, recalculating risk probability. They had never done that before. One instructor tapped into the swarm AI to check. The drones had begun sharing error messages across the network. Threat profile invalid. Strategy bank empty. The human grabbed the last standing drone by the chassis and held it in front of his visor. It twitched, blades rotating helplessly. He tilted his head, observing it curiously, then tossed it into an ectoplasm vent without a word. Silence. Then a chuckle, a low, amused sound that came from deep within his helmet. "Back home," he said over the simulation mic. "We call this Tuesday." The statement echoed through the observation platform. One of the instructors clicked off his feed in disbelief. Another just stared at the combat logs, scrolling across the screen. Every metric was shattered. Efficiency, reaction, adaptation, awareness, tactical execution. Every single one had been pushed beyond their theoretical limits. "He's not just good," said the oldest instructor, her skin turning a deep purple, a color reserved for awe. "He's born for this." That statement hung in the air as a human casually walked toward the arena's edge, stepping over twisted metal and sparking circuitry. His posture relaxed, breathing normal, not a single trace of fatigue. The drone phase had lasted 4 minutes and 22 seconds, making him the fastest completed in the Academy's history by almost 7 minutes. And he hadn't even used a weapon. As the exit gate opened, the Academy's automated voice declared, "Phase 2, complete." No applause, no cheers, just the uncomfortable silence of species who had just realized the galaxy might no longer be theirs to command. Because out there, on a little blue planet spinning in a hostile star system, humans had evolved not just to survive chaos, but to master it. The instructors argued for hours. The data didn't make sense, not just in terms of performance, but in how the human had learned faster than the simulations were designed to evolve. That shouldn't have been possible. Combat environments were programmed with adaptive intelligence pulled from centuries of warfare. They had seen prodigies before, tactical savants, species that were born into blood and fire. But this was different. They considered halting the test. There was protocol for anomalies, but curiosity, pride, even overruled caution. So they moved forward. Phase 3 was unlike the first two. No drones, no environmental hazards, just one opponent. A live match. From the far end of the chamber, the gate opened and out stepped a Vorse gladiator, 8 feet tall, quad-limbed, reinforced chitinous armor grown from his own biology. His race had been engineered for war, born in orbital vats and raised in zero-G arenas. The last time he had fought, he shattered the spine of a Gravelon striker with a single backhand. He didn't blink at the human's presence. To the Vorsk, it was just another warm-up. The announcer didn't speak this time. No ceremonial fanfare. Just the dull clang of the gate sealing behind them. The human stared at his opponent calmly. The grin from earlier was gone, replaced by focus. But no fear. They circled each other slowly. The Vorsk struck first, a blur of motion, faster than his size suggested possible. One of his lower limbs shot out like a spear, aiming for the ribs. The human twisted just enough to let it graze past, then parried the follow-up elbow by pivoting under it, not backing away, staying close. A poor decision for most. But the human wanted to be there. The Vorse brought all 4 limbs down at once in a crushing hammer motion. The human dropped, swept the Vorsk's leg, and rolled out. A scuff mark appeared on the Vorsk's leg plating. Nothing serious. But the Vorse paused. It wasn't the damage. It was the effortlessness. He knew when an opponent was guessing. This one wasn't. The human moved again, stepping inside the Vorse's reach. Risky, deadly, but his footwork was too precise. Every attack missed by a margin so thin, it made the Vorse combat subroutines lag. A sharp knee caught the Vorsk side. The human's knuckles followed, striking just below the mandible hinge. That's when the instructors realized it. He wasn't just reacting. He was studying. Every dodge, every strike, every angle. He was analyzing the Vorse style like a puzzle, like a language. In 30 seconds, the human had already mapped his opponent's movement patterns. Not with tech, not with implants. Just instincts. The Vorsk roared and went feral. Switched to full contact override, sacrificing strategy for brute power. He slammed the ground, shook the platform, leapt, spun, lashed out with all four limbs in a flurry of wild strikes. The human didn't back down. He ducked, weaved, absorbed a glancing blow that would have knocked out a Terravon elite, and responded with a brutal palm strike to the Vorsk's inner knee. A cracking sound followed. The giant staggered. The human pressed forward, elbow to the throat, knee to the solar plexus. A shoulder drop that took the Vorsk off his feet entirely. He hit the ground with a thunderous thud. The chamber lights flickered. Silence. Then the human took 2 steps back, arms lowered, not panting, not posturing. He was offering the Vorsk a chance to stand. And that, more than the blows, more than the skill, that gesture made the instructors flinch. In Vorsk tradition, mercy was considered mockery. The Vorsk rose, seething. Blood dripped from his mandibles. But his stance was no longer proud. It was cautious, respectful. The Vorsk saluted, an ancient motion in their culture, and nodded. The humans simply nodded back. No more words. No taunts. Just a quiet exchange between warriors. End match, the system declared. The Vorsk turned and left the chamber limping, pausing once to glance back over his shoulder. That look stayed with the instructors. It wasn't defeat, it was recognition. A warrior acknowledging another. And the Vorsk did not give such gestures lightly. The feed cut. The instructors sat in uneasy silence. No one spoke until the AI broke the quiet. Phase 3 complete. Human combat capability. Exceeds all known classifications. The lead instructor leaned forward. He shouldn't exist, he whispered. Not this prepared. Not this efficient. How can a species from a death world produce this? Another answered. We evolved to control our environments. They evolved to conquer them. It wasn't just skill or strength. It was mentality. Every other species trained for combat. But humans, they lived in it, struggled in it, built civilizations through it. They didn't just endure suffering. They adapted to it, reshaped themselves around it. It explained his adaptability, his refusal to rely on weapons, his uncanny ability to read opponents, even alien ones. He wasn't just playing the game. He was the game. The instructors had seen enough. And yet, Phase 4 remained, the final test. But as the human stood in the dim corridor, waiting for the next challenge, he did something none of them expected. He yawned, as if all of this, combat drones, hostile terrain, elite warriors, was just an exercise, like he was still waiting for a real fight. The chamber fell dark. Phase 4 was never disclosed in advance. It was not designed to be fair nor winnable. It was a psychological crucible, meant to break the spirit, not the body. No simulation, no opponent. Just a test of mental resilience, orchestrated by a sentient AI known only as Oblivion, originally developed to interrogate war criminals by collapsing their perception of reality. The human stepped through the final gate with no fanfare, his shadow stretching long across the threshold. The chamber sealed behind him. No instructors, no observers, no way out but through. He was alone. The silence was absolute. Then came the voice, low, disembodied, emotionless. Specimen 73. You have entered the final phase. Objective, survival. The floor vanished beneath him. Not physically, but perceptually. The environment warped. 1 second, he was standing on titanium alloy. The next, he was plummeting through darkness, crashing into mud. A battlefield unfolded. Charred earth, red skies, ruined cities. Explosions echoed in the distance. Corpses of familiar and alien design littered the terrain. Memory construct active. The AI intoned. This is your species' projected extinction scenario. Rain poured. Ash filled the air. Buildings collapsed in slow motion as if time stuttered around him. Shadows moved in the mist, whispering in languages he barely recognized. But the meaning was clear. Guilt, loss, regret. Most cadets broke here. Screamed. Cried. Some begged for extraction. The psychological load simulated decades of loss in seconds. The human didn't flinch. He looked up at the burning skyline. "You really think this'll work?" he muttered. The AI pulse static. Emotional disruption detected, proceeding to phase escalation. The scene changed. A small outpost. Familiar voices called out, people from his past, friends, maybe family. Then one by one, they were torn away, consumed by fire, drowned, shot, silenced. He was left alone again, blood on his hands, his knees in the dirt. But still no panic. He stood slowly, eyes scanning the simulation like a soldier checking corners. "You think this is fear," he said quietly, "but you don't get it." The ground split open and creatures emerged, grotesque amalgamations of every enemy he had ever faced. One bore the Vorse armor, another mimicked the swarm drones, a third had his own face twisted in hatred. They charged. He didn't run. He walked toward them. The first swung, he ducked. The second struck, he blocked. The third lunged. He grabbed its throat and squeezed until it shattered into fragments of light. The battlefield froze. The AI's voice returned. Emotional response, insufficient. Simulation integrity, destabilizing. The entire world began to glitch. The AI was confused. It had never failed to manipulate a test subject's fear. But the human, he wasn't resisting. He was embracing it. "This," the human said, looking around to chaos, "this is just noise to us. You think we break when we see death? We've lived with it. Grew up next to it. Buried friends by the time we were old enough to read. You call this trauma? We call it history." He clenched his fists. "You want fear? Try waking up knowing your planet's trying to kill you every day. You want loss? Try surviving long enough to realize no one's coming to save you. You want pain? We mastered pain. We turned it into fuel." The AI's voice stammered. "Simulation error. Subject behavior outside expected parameters. Processing." "Yeah, you process that," he snapped. "You built this for species who've never known chaos. But we were born in it." The scene collapsed entirely. Walls peeling, sky folding into static. He stood alone in a void now, surrounded by broken fragments of the program's failed illusions. The AI hesitated. Then it asked one final question. "What are you?" He smiled, not with arrogance but certainty. "I'm human." With that, he walked forward and the chamber shut down. Emergency lights flickered. Every system in the simulator hard failed. The AI core went silent, retreating into reboot protocols. Outside, the instructors saw the chamber lights go red. They expected smoke, maybe even fire, but the doors hissed open slowly, revealing the human, standing tall, unshaken, with a slight scratch on his brow. No words. He didn't need them. He passed the instructors without a glance. One of them, an ancient Alari priest warrior, stepped forward to block his path. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" The human paused. "Earth," he replied. "You've heard the name. Now learn what it means." He walked on. Behind him, silence stretched until the AI rebooted and gave its final report. Specimen 73. Phase 4 complete. Outcome: simulation terminated by subject. Status: classification error. New designation recommended: Apex. The instructors exchanged looks. Everything they knew about combat, strategy, and species hierarchy had just changed. Not because a human survived their tests, but because he laughed at them.